Hi, I'm Selina, and I am an alcoholic. I'm just gonna do a quick sidebar. Before the meeting started, there was some banter conversation going on about some sports that were going on in the U.S. And at one point, Eric said, we shouldn't really be doing this here. People get worked up. Outside issues, and that is so important when you're a new person. Like if I was a new person coming to a meeting for the first time and people are talking about sports, it's like, am I at an AA meeting? Like, why do I care about this? I'm not interested in this. I've gone to meetings before where people were talking about their pets and they were holding up their animals. And it's like, this is not AA. Like, we are here to represent AA. Like a parking lot meeting is still a meeting. And so it's really important that we kind of keep that in mind. So anyway, my name is Selena. I'm an alcoholic. Um, I have a sobriety date of February the 23rd of 2013, which means that I am currently at 11 years and 11 months. My son used to send me something when it was 11/11 and said, it's 11/11, make a wish. When I am this close to my anniversary, one of the things that happens for me is I get in a real contemplative state and I start to think about where I was when I came in, what life looked like when I came in, what my life looked like before alcohol, and what my life looks like now. And in the beginning, when I first came into the rooms, I had a lot of focus on when I drank and what I drank because that's how I connected my disease. I thought it was all about the fact that, I drank a case of beer and, had 28 shots and the idea that I'd focus on when Christmas was coming up or when New Year's was coming up and I would think, um, yeah, I drank on these holidays and this holiday is coming up and that holiday is coming up. And the reality for me is it didn't matter whether it was a holiday or not. I drank every day anyway. So New Year's was just another day for me. It was just like, Thursday afternoon, because that's what I did. What I came to understand is that the drinking, it was really about what the alcohol did for me and what the alcohol did to me. So in the very beginning, it's like I had all this stuff happen in my childhood. I had this feeling of not belonging, not fitting in, kind of being on the outside, not being accepted by my world. It's like in my home, my mother was brilliant. She loved me unconditionally. Everything was good. She made me feel so special. Outside of that threshold, not so much happening there. And when you're a little person, even when you're a bigger person, but as a little person, that really kind of sets the stage. So like I was looking for approval from people outside of my house. And I wasn't getting that. And so what happened at a very young age, 4 years old, 5 years old, I started to have these insecurities. And I started to get this picture of who I was as a person. And so at that young age, I was feeling less than and inadequate. And that brought up all kinds of insecurities. And so I had some anxiety and some sadness and some depression, that were really, really deep seated. And it would take many, many years to kind of get over that kind of stuff, and So I had that going on. I had this absence of a father. He abandoned us when I was about 6. So I have no father. And then we grew up poor. We were the welfare kids. We were the kids that had the tickets to get the free lunch. So I had that on top of that. Then I had, men in my life, whether family men or outside, that did some really inappropriate things to little kids. So now I've got that on top of that. And, there was a long time that I used to think that that was why I drank, because of, people not liking me, because I didn't have a father, because I was poor, all of that stuff. And, what it came to be for me is that I didn't drink because of all those things happening. I drank because and behind the feelings that came up after that stuff. So it wasn't that I drank because I didn't have a dad. I drank because I was lonely. I drank because I felt abandoned. I drank because I was sad. All of that stuff. I drank because I didn't feel loved. And all of that stuff, it added up and it compiled and it made me feel like that was what was going on in my life. So when alcohol came into the picture, it made all of that stuff go away. It made all of those feelings, that uncomfortability, it all went away. Now my situation and my circumstances for a long time after that were the same. There were still men that were being inappropriate with me. I still didn't have a father in the home. We were still poor. Um, but the alcohol, it did something to my feelings. It made me not feel sad. It made me not feel anxious and inadequate. It made me feel for the first time like I was a part of something, like I belonged somewhere, that there were people that cared about me. Because no matter where I went and no matter who I was with, if there was alcohol around, I was in, and I felt like I was in. And I always wanted to like be in the crowd, in the mix, in the game. And the interesting thing about all of that is I was in the mix and I was in the game. I was like a straight A student. And I played sports and I played instruments, and I had all of that stuff going on. And from all through my elementary, all through high school, I had all of that stuff going on. But the stuff that was going on the outside of me wasn't enough to make me feel okay about who I was on the inside. It was just a cover up. It was just a mask. It was like every day in my life was Halloween. Like I always had this mask on. It was always Mardi Gras. I always had a mask on that I didn't let you see into, because if you were able to see through my mask, and if you were able to really see who I was, you would see that I was really afraid. And that was my uncomfortability. I was afraid that you were going to know that I was afraid. So even as a kid, like I learned how to put up those blocks, and I learned how to put up that space and to keep you at a distance, because a lot of what was going on in my life was stuff that I had contrived in my head. Even then I had this delusional stuff. It's like there was stuff going on in my head that wasn't real. I was saying things to myself that wasn't real. And that's what I went with. So I go away to college. I graduated high school, I go away to college, and, I really believe that I was born an alcoholic. I believe that I was born with that disease. I believe that I had that allergy because I became addicted at a very young age. And there was never enough. Even at 18, 19, 20 years old, there was just never enough. And I never wanted the party to be over. Like we would be having a good time. Now it's 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. People are going to bed. People are going to study. And I'm like, wait, where are you going? Like I'm just getting revved up and you people are leaving. Like, don't you get it? And so what ended up happening is I started to align myself with people that did the same thing that I did, people that drank the way I did. And that made me feel okay about what I was doing, because I never had to look at the fact that I wasn't going to class and I wasn't studying and I wasn't getting anything done because of my drinking, because the people that I was associated with, none of us were doing that. Nobody was getting up for class. Nobody was studying. Um, we were all hungover all of the time. And I liked that. So I'm in college, right? And I go away and I go to grad school. And while I'm in grad school, I come home and my mom doesn't look good, and I go to her doctor and I'm like, my mom's in the hospital again. Why is she in the hospital again? He tells me he can't tell me because of doctor patient, confidentiality. And I'm like, not begging. I'm beyond begging. I am demanding that this man tell me something. And he tells me that my mom is really sick. And he tells me that she has 6 months to live. And in June of 1985, at 46 years old, my mother died of lung cancer. And I was devastated. Like that, like she was like the air that I breathed. She was that person that loved me unconditionally. I know some of us on this call have that person. It may not be a parent, it may be a sibling, it may be a friend, it may be a coworker, but that one person in your life that makes you feel like you matter, that makes you feel like it's worth getting up in the morning. And that's what my mom did for me. And something really significant happens then that changes the trajectory of my whole life. Because I had grown up with my mother's Christian God. She was a Southern Baptist. I grew up Roman Catholic. I was, very active in the church. And so I had this concept and this belief in God. Maybe not totally comprehending it, but as much as a young child could do it. So when my mom got sick and died, so did God. Because all I kept thinking was, if there is this God that is all powerful and all knowing and all loving, and he took my mother away, this woman that he's all knowing, he must know that this woman means everything to me. Everything. And he took her and she was gone. And there was nothing. It's like it just sucked the life out of me. It wasn't just that there was a hole in it, just sucked the life right out of me. So now I've shifted from what alcohol used to do for me And now it's what alcohol did to me, because now it starts to do something. Because I'm not just drinking to have a good time. I'm not just drinking to make that stuff go away. I'm drinking because I can't help it. I'm drinking because I have no choice. Alcohol starts to make choices for me. You know, it had started when I was in college, when it started telling me not to go to class. But after my mother died, it just took over. You know, not only did it make choices for me, it allowed me to justify my behavior. You know, so I would steal from my jobs. I was a waitress once, and I used to wait for a big ticket, like a $40 or $50 ticket, and then I would tell the boss that the table walked out, and I would pocket the $50. And I would justify that in my head because this is a big restaurant. They make a lot of money. What difference is that $40 going to make to them? And I'm not even making minimum wage, you know, so I would justify things like that. I would justify sleeping with other people that were in relationships, that were married. It didn't matter whether they were married, whether they were dating. Like, in my mind, it was, I'm not in a relationship. I'm not committed to anybody. So it's okay. You know, so it was like I gave myself permission to hurt other people. I gave myself permission to interfere with other people's lives. You know, I gave myself permission to be a liar. I gave myself permission to do the things that I didn't grow up doing. You know, I had the go ahead to throw all of my morals and all of my values right out the window. And I was okay with that because I started telling myself all of those things about what happened when I was growing up. Like, you know, I was treated badly and we didn't have anything. And you know, all of this stuff. And it was like, I'm entitled to something. Like, I deserve something. You know, so it's like I would still telling myself, well, I earned this, you know, after what the world had done to me, and after the way the people had treated me, and after the way God took my mother away. I was entitled to this. I had every right to steal from you, to cheat, to lie, to manipulate you. And that was my big thing, the manipulation. You know, and what started to happen is the alcohol wasn't giving me what it used to give me. Like, you know, it was like I used to drink and get excited about drinking and getting the next one. All of a sudden, I need more than just the alcohol to give me that charge and that excitement. And so I needed to steal because I needed something more. I needed to lie. I needed to manipulate. And, you know, in my mind, it was, I am going to do this to you before you do it to me, because you're going to do it to me, because that's what the world has been doing to me my whole life. They've been taken from me and taken from me and taken from me. And I was letting it happen. And it's like, this is not going to happen anymore. I'm going to get mine. I am going to get what is due me. And I lived in that mindset for a long time. And something happened in my life. And God, and I believe it was God before I even believed it was God. But I was at a low point in my life. And it felt like in the core of my being that I was done. And I think that state of helplessness and hopelessness was just what God needed to get in there and crack me open. And that's what happened. Like, I don't think that I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I stopped drinking, because if I had the power and the ability to do that, I would have done it a long time ago. I wouldn't have drank for 20 years and live in misery if I could have stopped that myself. So I come in and I'm in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I don't really want to be here. I don't really feel connected to you guys. I don't know what's going on with this, don't drink and go to meetings and play the tape through and all of this stuff, and easy does it and one day at a time. Like, I don't understand any of this. And I am looking for reasons not to connect with you. So if I went to a meeting and the speaker was talking about having nothing, eating out of garbage cans, being homeless, living in paper boxes, it's like, hey, I never did that stuff. I'm not like you. And I'd go back out. And then I would come back in and I would hear you talk about how you grew up with these two parents in this nice home and nice neighborhoods. And I would be like, hey, I'm not like you. I didn't grow up that way. And I would go back out again. And I spent years and years and years just going out and coming back in and going out and coming back in. And, I started doing what people were asking me to do. I got a home group and I got commitments in the home group. I was making coffee and I was a secretary and I was a greeter. So I'm doing all of this stuff. Had a sponsor. I had a lot of sponsors. I must have had, oh my God, like 10 sponsors in 7 years, because there was always something wrong with the sponsor. And I was always fine, because that's what I did. I spent all of my time finding fault in what was going on in this program. And so that kept me coming in and going out and coming in and going out, and the thing about sobriety for me is that it's not about the not drinking. Like, not drinking is the first step. Like, I come in and I don't drink, but I didn't know that there was more to it than just not drinking, because I was not drinking and I was still uncomfortable in my own skin. I was not drinking and I was still lying to people. I was still manipulating. I was still stealing. I was the same person, and I'm not drinking. And my life isn't changing. And it's not that my life didn't get different. I kept thinking, like, if I got the good job, and if I got the spouse, and if I got the kids, and if I got the house, if I got the 2 cars, like, life was going to be better. And I got all of that stuff. I'm not drinking and I've got all this stuff. And I don't feel any better. I feel just as empty and lonely and lost and alienated as I did when I had a drink. Except now I've got double masks on, because now I'm really supposed to be happy. I'm really supposed to be enjoying my life. I've got this great family. I've got this great job and this great house in this great neighborhood. And so I put on the real big smiles. I do all the mommy stuff. I go to the games. I do PTA. I'm doing all that stuff I'm supposed to do. I'm going to work. I got a good job. I'm making decent money. I'm doing all of that stuff. And inside of me, it's like, why don't I feel better? Why is this thing not working for me? And I would watch people I would watch you come in and get 3 months and 6 months and a year, 5 years. And I couldn't keep any time together. I would get 3 months and I would go out, get 9 months and I would go out. I'd get 3 days and I would go out. And I really thought, there's something wrong with me. Like, why is everybody in the rooms getting this except me? And I didn't understand that. But all it did was it reinforced the idea that there was something wrong with me. It reinforced the idea that I was inadequate. I was less than. I wasn't worthy. I wasn't like the rest of you. I wasn't as good as you. That's what happened in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not drinking, I still have these feelings. And, when the feelings would get really strong, I would think, I might as well have a drink. And I would go back out, because at least when I was out, I didn't have to feel all that stuff. And all that alienation and all that sadness and the anger. Because now I'm shifting and I'm starting to get really, really angry. And I'm starting to be really, really rageful. And I'm starting to act out in all kinds of crazy ways. I would go to a meeting and tell you guys, I love you. And I'd reach my hand out to the newcomer and welcome. And I would go home and I would scream at my kids. I would go home and I would scream at my wife. I would go to work and I was rude and obnoxious to my coworkers and to patients and to visitors and anyone that I came in contact with. I was a nightmare. I mean, it got to the point where people didn't want to be around me. Like, I would get up on a Saturday and my family would be gone. And the crazy thing about all that is my first thought would be, oh, wow, nobody's home. Where'd they go? And my second thought would be, God, I hope they stay out a long time so I can drink more. Because at that point, that was my God. That's the thing that made my life make sense, was the drinking. And I would do that for a while, and I would get tired of being angry and restless and irritable and discontented, and I would come back in. And I still wasn't, it's like there wasn't an answer. Like, what is going on? Because I didn't know that there was more to just not drinking. And, I managed through no power of my own to celebrate a year. It was insane to me. Like, how did I do that? I just started coming in. I just started acting as if I just started doing what you guys told me to do. And you guys were like, don't drink one day at a time. And I didn't drink one day at a time. And, I did all that other stuff, but something was happening. And I was starting to believe that maybe this thing could work for me too. And then I've got 2 years, and then I've got 5 years, right? And now I've got 7.5 years, and I'm sober, not drinking, got my job, got my kids, got my family, everything should be good. And on the inside, I am dying. And on the inside, I'm thinking, man, if I am going to be this miserable and this uncomfortable in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I might as well have a drink, because I feel like I need one, because none of this stuff is working. Like, none of the stuff that you guys are telling me is working. Like, so Why don't I feel okay inside? If I'm doing what you guys are doing and I'm doing what you're telling me to do, then I should feel better. Because I thought that that's what it was about. I thought that not drinking was going to make me and my life better because I didn't know any different. And so I'm 7.5 years sober, and COVID hits and changed my life because now I'm on lockdown with the rest of the world, and there's no meetings in person. And I started doing these telephone meetings. I looked up AA meetings and I found these telephone meetings. And I used to go to these telephone meetings, and I don't know, just wasn't getting it for me. And someone on one of those meetings said, "Why don't you go to Zoom? There's meetings online." So I start coming to these meetings online, and I'm like, this isn't so bad. And I'm not working. So there were these meetings in San Diego, and I start going to these meetings in San Diego, and I'm getting connected. And I'm starting to feel like I'm becoming part of something. And I'm starting to believe, you guys. And I'm starting to believe that there is something. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to get it, but I'm starting to believe that there's something there. And so I get this job, right? So I can't go to these California, San Diego meetings. And I asked somebody, is there anything on the East Coast like this stuff that's going on in California? And they're like, yeah, go to the Bronx Big Book Study, right? So I go to the Bronx, and I get in the Bronx in the same way that there was this camaraderie going on in here at the beginning of the meeting, and people are laughing and smiling and talking and having a good time and enjoying each other's company. I get to the Bronx and they're doing that. Man, if anybody walked into that room and you didn't know it, you would believe that there was a party going on in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was the energy. And I started to feel like I really want that. That's what I want. I don't know what it is that you have, but for the first time, it's like I really want that. I really need that. And something is telling me if I get that, my life is going to change. And so I'm in the meeting, and the meeting starts, and people start talking about God. But talking about God like God is their best friend, talking about God like God is sitting right next to them in the same room. And for the first time in my life, I realized that that's what was missing in my life. I needed and I wanted the God that you had. And I didn't know how to get it. And somebody at a meeting who was speaking started talking about this big book. And it's like, the answer is in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I get with this woman who sits with me, and we go through this book page by page and line by line and word by word, and something starts to happen to me inside. I don't know how it happens. I just know that I start to have this experience, and something starts to come alive in me, and I start to believe and I start to understand that I am powerless over this disease. And I start to believe that there is a God that I can turn my life over to, and my life is going to change. And I start to believe that if I sit and I look at myself and I look at my past, on the other side of that, things are going to get different. And so I do all that. Sit down and I do this inventory, and I look at myself and I look at the things that I've done to other people, and I see how I am responsible and I am accountable for things that have happened in my life. And I start to go back. And when I'm able to see all that, I'm able to go to you and I'm able to say, hey, I was wrong. And layers and layers of guilt and shame and remorse, they just fall from me. And I get this lightness within me. And I get this whole new perspective. And the God that used to be out there somewhere in the sky with the long beard. I don't know. I don't know what God, whatever God that I believed in as a kid. All of a sudden, the God that you guys believed was breathing your air and sitting next to you. It's like, I got it. Like that's how I got to it. And it wasn't that I did that I had some magic and I opened this bottle and God came popping out. It was like going through the book, I start to have an experience. Like I read Bill's story, right? And I start to understand that I think the way Bill thought and I drink the way Bill drank. And I believe the things that Bill believed. And all of a sudden I come to understand that I'm just like you guys. Like we have the same feelings. We don't have the same life. We don't have the same experiences, but we have the same feelings. That was my first connection, is understanding that I had the same feelings and going through that book and coming to understand that my life could be different. And I go through this process and I get to the end of these 12 steps, right? And I have this experience that awakens me to the presence of God that I never wanted to believe in. And it transformed my life, and it transformed my life from the inside out. See, because I'd spent my whole life thinking that if things were okay on the outside, that I would be okay on the inside. And I kept trying to adjust my life and change things and manipulate things so that they would feel okay outside. And it didn't work because I didn't know that it was a God thing. I didn't understand that there was nothing that I could do to change my life. That everything that happened to me, everything that happened to me was all about God. And I just had to relinquish the power that I thought that I had, that I really didn't. And I had to understand that I can't make myself not be manipulative. I can't make myself not lie the same way that I couldn't make myself not drink. Like this was all a God thing. And I had to have the humility to go to God and say, yo, God, look, I don't want to live like this anymore. Please take this away from me. And then I had to continue the process and trust that God was going to do what God does. And you know what happened? God did what God does. And my life changed. And for the first time, I can breathe. For the first time, I feel this peace and this serenity and this comfortability in my own skin. And I don't know when it and how it happened. And I swear to you, it happened in this apartment with years of sobriety. I woke up one day and I thought to myself, wow, I really feel good. Like I was in this place of Zen. And all I kept thinking was, when did that happen? I don't know when it happened. I just know that all of a sudden I had this awareness that there was a change that happened within me. I had this awareness that there was a God that was living in and through me. I had this awareness that I had this connection and that the connection was not out there. The connection was not getting stuff. The connection was the experience that I had going through the book. And there are people that'll talk about they stay sober on the fellowship. I am not going to deny how people stay sober. People say they go into rehabs and detoxes and they stay sober and they go to church. And I am not taking anything away from anybody that does whatever they do. All I am saying that through my experience, the change that happens, it's in the book. In a 12-step program, a book that's written on the 12 steps. a program that comes from the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if in the 12-step program and I have this book that gives me the guidelines, why am I not doing that? Why wouldn't I want to do that? Why would I, watching your lives change and watching things get better for you, why wouldn't I want that? Why wouldn't I do these simple steps? Get a sponsor that is armed with the facts about themselves, that has an experience and can take you through this book, not to have their experience. Like my sponsor didn't take me through this book and tell me how to do things and tell me how to feel and tell me what to believe. My sponsor took me through this book and was my guide and showed me the way that she went through this process and ensured me that if I went through this process the way that she went through this process, that things would change and I would awaken to the Spirit of God. And that's exactly what happened to me. Now, I'm going to be honest. Like, I have this experience and I feel different inside because I have this awareness that there is a God that's within me. But just because that is happening doesn't mean that life doesn't happen, because life happens. Even with the time that I have in this program, life still happens. See, and it's through this process of prayer and meditation. It's through this process of constantly making amends. It's through this process of reaching my hand out to a newcomer and showing someone and taking someone through this process. Like, I need all of that stuff. But I'm going to tell you, about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with MS. And then for the last year and a half, I could barely walk. And I was having this nerve problems. And so in October, I had spine surgery. And it's like night and day. But in the course of that time, between August and now, I find out that I have nodules on my lungs. I find out that I have COPD. I find out, and this was a couple of days ago, I find out that I have skin cancer. So I've got all of this stuff. And I had this moment when I felt like, what is happening, God? You know, like I got all the good stuff on the inside and now like I'm falling apart and my life is going, I don't know where it's going. And I had this moment of not what's the point, but I had this place of like, what else are you going to do to me, God? Like, come on. I'm showing up. I'm doing the deal. I started to feel like Job. You know, it's like one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. But I did what the program teaches me to do. And I sat with God in prayer and meditation. I picked up the phone. I called somebody in the program. And then you know what happened? Like there's a part of the book and it says, either God is everything or God is nothing. What is your choice to be? And I used to be in a place where I would have to make that decision. It's like, is God everything or is God nothing? Is God everything or is God nothing? And of course, inevitably, I'd be like, well, God is everything. Well, because of my spiritual practice, and after I sat with God and I sat in prayer and I sat in meditation, I'm not making a decision of is God everything or is God nothing. Like I have this understanding and this awareness that God is everything. My God is everything, period. There's no choice. It's like God is everything. And whatever is going on in my life, I don't know why it's going on in my life. All I know is that I show up every day because I have a God that watches over me. I have a God that guides me. I have a God that's been with me my entire life, even when I didn't know it. I have that God. And so I just have to show up every day and do the next thing, do what God has chosen me to do. And what I'm charged with is to carry this message to another alcoholic. That's the deal. I'm carrying the message and I'm practicing these principles in all of my affairs. And all of my affairs are the people that I work with. All of my affairs are the people that are cutting me off in traffic. All of my affairs are the people in my family that I don't even want to talk to. That's what I'm doing here. So whatever else is going on is secondary. And I'm not getting lost in all of that, because when I get lost in that, then I'm living in a state of depression and loneliness and inadequacy. And I don't live like that anymore. I don't need to live like that anymore, because I have a God that is everything in my life. And if you are new or just coming back and you're in this place of, I don't know if this thing is going to work for me, just keep showing up, because this is for everyone. This deal is promised to all of us. It's not a select few. It's not for someone who has 9 months or 11 years or 20 years. It's not for that. It's for everyone. It's for the person that comes into these rooms and they have a day. This is for you too. It's for that person that has 3 days. This is for you too. It's for that person that keeps coming in and going out and coming in and going out. This is for you too. It's promised for all of us. So just keep showing up, even if you don't know why you're showing up. Just keep showing up if you don't feel it. Just keep showing up and walk with us and be with us. And we will show you the way that we went. And all we do is ask you to have the willingness to go with us. And that's all I have. So thanks for letting me share.